Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Well, it's the by-election that everybody was waiting for. The result that almost everybody expected. And the question now, what's next for Pierre Poilievre, officially back as a member of Parliament, officially back in the House of Commons, and officially back as the leader of the official opposition. We're grateful that you're here with us on a very special edition of Real Talk as we take a look at the election results in Battle River Crowfoot. Not a huge shock to anybody that was watching, but there are a ton of spin-off storylines that we'll get to in just a moment with the National Post's correspondence on Western and federal government relations. You've heard him on the show before, Rahim Mohamed, with his signature style of commentary. We'll talk to him from a conservative perspective. What does Pierre Poilievre's by-election win actually mean? How much do the results, the numbers, actually matter? And what does this mean, quite frankly, for the federal government and Canadians that still have many issues forefront and very relevant to their lives? The cost of housing, the price of groceries, trade with the United States, and other significant headlines, of course, that for the most part have flown perhaps a little bit under the radar because you haven't had Parliament in session. It's been the sleepy summer months. It's been a bit of a weird scenario, as we've discussed in past, typically the summer when most folks stop paying attention to the news cycle or at least seriously step back. But this by-election added a little bit of extra interest across the country as folks watched Pierre Poilievre look to earn his way back so he could most effectively serve as leader of the official opposition. Co-hosts of The Strategists, Zain, Velji, and Stephen Carter will join me this morning with their analysis. That'll be our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. And, of course, we'll be looking to our live chat, our inbox, to talk at ryanjespersen.com for what Real Talkers have to say as well. Pierre Poilievre steps up to the microphone with the full knowledge that he was returning to Ottawa. As results started to pour in, it became very apparent that he was going to be the member of Parliament for Battle River Crowfoot. Don't forget his conservative colleague, Damien Carrick. Damien Carrick stepped aside so Mr. Poilievre could run. And he offered a message not just to, of course, Canadians, but in particular to the voters that participated in this by-election and that made sure that he had that all-important seat. Here's a little bit of what Pierre Poilievre had to say.
These are the farmers, the tradespeople, the soldiers, the prison guards, the entrepreneurs, and so much more. Through drought and depression, through booms and busts, they've come through it all, and they've never stopped. But this incredible region and its amazing people have suffered terribly over the last 10 years. I have seen the main streets that have been hollowed out, and the trades workers who are underemployed because there is just not the work, as the federal government has attacked the oil and gas sector and favored foreign producers. This is the truth here in Battle River Crowfoot and in many communities across this country. Over the last 10 years, Liberal policies have sent crime, immigration, housing costs, inflation spiraling out of control. Now, they promised recently that things would be different, but under Mr. Carney and his 157 days in office, they've only gotten worse. There have been many announcements and meetings, many photo ops, and a lot of jazz, but not a lot of results. He sent everyone home for a summer vacation. He sent them home even though the deficit is spiraling out of control. Inflation is up, elbows are down, no resource projects are underway, and a housing crisis worsens as builders can't afford to build and buyers can't afford to buy.
There he is. Elbows are down. I like that one right out of the gates as we welcome back to the show a national correspondent for the National Post. He's a journalist covering federal and Western relations for that publication. You know him. You love him. Rahim Mohamed. It's nice to see your face. Where was your head at as you were covering this whole thing?
Well, first of all, I'm quite well rested, which is not usually the case for me the morning after a by-election, but I got to sleep pretty early last night, as I'm sure you did as well. So I'm rip-roaring to go Looks like I don't have any bags under my eye. Feeling rested, feeling clear-headed. Had the rare by-election where I got a good night's sleep. Not too much suspense last night. I think the results unfolded pretty much how people expected them to. If anything, Poilievre maybe overshot expectations by a few percentage points. So not much suspense, but I would say a good night all in all for Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I would say you're looking as handsome as ever. Clean shaven even this morning, with the exception of that magnificent mo that you're rocking. But I think not only perhaps did you sleep early, and maybe even based on your personal political perspective, rest easy last night. I don't know. We can get into that in just a little bit. But I think many of us, including you and I in brief conversation yesterday leading up to this, were wondering, with Elections Canada taking the unusual step, almost the unprecedented step of going with the write-in ballot for this by-election, 214 candidates, a result of the longest ballot committee's shenanigans here. 214 different names on that ballot. The write-in ballot for the voters of Battle River Crowfoot. A lot of people wondered if this was going to take forever and ever and ever to count. That was not the case.
So I think there was a terrific example of the Conservative campaign taking absolutely nothing for granted. You might have seen this yourself, but right outside of voting stations, they actually put up signs instructing voters on how to mark in Pierre Poilievre on the ballot, with the spelling, with a sample of what that write-in ballot would look like. So this was a campaign that was a well-oiled machine. They weren't going to make some of the same mistakes that led to the surprise loss for Mr. Poilievre in Carleton in April. And this was a really impressive showing of getting out the vote and sending a clear signal that Mr. Poilievre isn't done just yet. He remains as popular as ever with the party's base in Battle River and rural parts of the country like it.
Yeah, I'll let folks know that we're taking a look now on Elections Canada official site. These are the preliminary results, which could, of course, change within the next number of hours, the next number of days. But at the time, 8:38 a.m. Mountain Time on the 19th of August, the morning after this by-election, Pierre Poilievre with 80.4% of the vote, just over 80% of the vote. That's 40,500 votes. Bonnie Critchley, who ran a hell of a campaign as an independent, finishing second with 9.9% of the vote, just over 5,000 votes. The Liberal candidate, Darcy Spady, finishing a distant third, 4.3% of the vote with 2,174 votes. It goes down from there. Catherine Swampy, by the way, a recognizable name for anybody that's followed Alberta politics, just over 1,000 votes. That's about 2% as the NDP candidate there. Now, Mr. Poilievre earns a couple of percentage points fewer than Damien Carrick did in the most recent federal election. Carrick also did not have 213 other names on the ballot, and is it safe to say, maybe didn't have as motivated of an opposition. With respect to the people that threw their hats in the ring in the most recent federal election, this one was obviously very different. People across the country, including you, including me, we're talking about Bonnie Critchley and other candidates. The eyes of the nation were on this by-election.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a very good showing for Mr. Poilievre. Another thing I point to is you saw Liberal support almost halved. I think it was up to around 12%, 11 or 12% in April. Mr. Spady, I think, with the disappointing 4.7%. I think some of that is the Bonnie Critchley effect and the amount of attention she's been able to get from people like me and you, and she's been built this kind of national presence. But I think another thing that's going to be a learning experience for the Conservative Party is Mr. Poilievre was very effective in the way he attacked the electric vehicle mandate. To me, the electric vehicle mandate, which proposes to phase out gas-powered vehicles by 2035, starting with a 20% quota for 2026 model year vehicles next year. It's a very, very much a carbon tax type issue. It's easy to understand. For me, a lay observer, It doesn't make a whole lot of common sense. It's quite an easy thing for Mr. Poilievre to communicate. And he did so quite well in this writing, saying at various points that banning, gas and diesel powered trucks is akin to banning rural life. I think that could be a very powerful message for a conservative party that's been grasping for a sort of carbon tax 2.0. And I'd imagine we're going to see those attacks ramp up in the weeks to come.
Yeah, so you've got now Pierre Poilievre obviously chomping at the bit, ready to go back into the House of Commons. I mean, I got a million questions for you. One of them, I'm just curious. There's people here right now that are talking about, Pierre, not here for the people of Battle River Crowfoot. Obviously, he spoke directly to them out of the gates with his comments last night, sharing an anecdote about Mr. Kurick's family and the loss of somebody significant to them right around harvest time. He talked about how the community rallied together. He used that farming community as a metaphor and moving on. And then, of course, got to business, as most reasonable people would expect he will, on the federal and even international issues that he believes that Mark Carney is mishandling as Prime Minister. How should the people of Battle River Crowfoot expect to be paid attention to? Shall they expect any favors, any focused attention from their new member of parliament, who obviously has a much bigger job, respectfully, ahead of him than simply representing that riding?
So I think this is where there's going to be a challenging tightrope for Mr. Poilievre to walk. The map is what it is, and it's going to be, Southern Ontario, the federalist parts of Quebec, Atlantic Canada, where the election is won and lost. He doesn't have that much room to grow in places like Alberta and Saskatchewan, where conservatives already have the lion's share of the seats. I think he's going to have to develop a calibrated message, in particular on trade. China, as you recently have seen, has slapped on massive punitive tariffs on canola growers. You saw Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe frame this as, Ottawa protecting a fledgling electric vehicle industry in Southern Ontario and throwing an established canola growing industry under the bus. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Poilievre is going to have to target Southern Ontario, is going to have to target those high valued parts of the map. As a leader of a federal party that would like to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, and doing that while simultaneously speaking for the people of rural Alberta, I think that's going to be a challenging tightrope for him to watch, and we'll have to pay a lot of, quite close attention to his sort of rhetoric and messaging on trade going forward, especially if the framing we're getting is, canola growers in Western Canada versus electric vehicle plants in Central Canada.
We're talking to Rahim Mohamed, National Post. For folks curious, typically, and correct me, actually, I mean, I guess you can kind of argue this both ways if you can find examples, but typically by-elections draw less interest than your federal elections that are following the calendar, following schedule. Back at the end of April, the federal election, about 65,200 voters turned out, sending Damien Kurick back to Ottawa. In this by-election, the 18th of August, 50,434, a drop of about 15,000 voters, but not insignificant. Another factor, worth touching on, and you did briefly, Darcy Smitty, the Liberal candidate here, losing support by about half of the election result a number of months ago. You mentioned the Bonnie Critchley effect. For sure, I think that factored in, probably in a big way. But what do you read into the numbers? People look at by-elections all the time. The Liberals lose a stronghold in Toronto a while ago under Justin Trudeau. You remember everybody was buzzing about that one. What are you reading into the numbers here in the bigger picture across the country?
Again, I think one thing Mr. Poilievre did very well was take national issues and apply them to the local context in Battle River Crowfoot. I think he did that the best with the Carney government's electric vehicle mandate, which I think it's going to be hard for Carney not to budge on. I believe the mandate as of next year will set a 20% quota for electric vehicles being sold in the 2026 model year. And manufacturers, auto dealers, et cetera, have said that's going to be an incredibly steep hill decline, particularly with the Trump administration south of the border moving in the opposite direction in terms of electric vehicle subsidies and mandated support for the electric vehicle industry. So I think this reflects Mr. Poilievre quite effectively pinpointing several weaknesses right now in Prime Minister Mark Carney, the Liberal platform. I think paramount among which is the electric vehicle mandate, which I would be hard pressed to believe Carney won't be forced to back off on at least a little bit in the weeks to come. No one seems to think 20% electric vehicles as of next year is a realistic target.
Well, hey, why don't we swerve off and quickly talk EVs? We can talk politics. We'll bring it back. If you're just joining us on our Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets, we're talking to National Post journalist Rahim Mohamed. Not only are consumers, and I'm not saying there's not a place for EVs. We talk about EVs on the show all the time. And obviously there's wonderful technology at play and they're very interesting and people are intrigued by them. I think also, most consumers appreciate a free market. Not to say that government and regulatory bodies don't have a role, but not only are consumers not buying up EVs in a way that legislators suspected they might, but manufacturers. I just had this conversation with the owner of a car dealership literally yesterday. Manufacturers are starting to pull back on their bullish plans for rolling EVs off the assembly line, and a lot of them are going back and reintroducing, Dodge is a good example, reintroducing the V6s, the V8s, the V10s that consumers have been looking for. What do you read into that? Like, how much do you think consumers have a say? Manufacturers oftentimes beholden to the whims of lawmakers. Consumers oftentimes, though, have a bigger influence, I would say, with the lawmakers, with the policymakers. They're the ones that are putting them in office.
Well, I mean, I'm no Max Fawcett when it comes to kind of knowing the EV space and projections of that market. I will say I'm probably not the best person to talk to. I'd call myself a neo-Luddite. I've seen enough, Terminator movies and zombie movies to think, to feel quite strongly that we need a critical mass of, 1992 Toyota trucks for when Skynet takes over or when the zombies take over or, when our appliances are turned against us by artificial intelligence. So I'm probably, I wouldn't call myself a crankpot on most things. I'm a crankpot in I'm terrorized on the amount of computer code in things like electric vehicle and how that can be turned against users. I mean, if Israel can turn pagers into grenades, imagine what China can do with electric vehicles. So that is my kind of personal,
are you serious?
Kind of paranoia. And actually that does, I'm being facetious, but that actually loops into, I think, one of the more compelling issues that Bonnie Critchley brought up, which is the right to repair. So forget electric vehicles, but even John Deere tractors that are becoming more dependent on embedded software, more computerized. It's very hard if you're a farmer to get under the hood and fix your John Deere tractor, because you'll run into a firewall or you run into a digital lock, and you'll end up having to bring in, your certified John Deere technician from 2 hours away just to press a button to get you around that firewall. So even forget electric vehicles, even farm equipment, it's becoming so computerized. It's becoming an issue for people to repair things that they own. And that again gets probably into my own personal anxieties and paranoias about the computerization of everything. But it is, Ms. Critchley did a really good job of showing in a concrete way how that's affecting rural life already. Forget, when 20-30% of vehicles sold our electric vehicles.
Yeah, man. I mean, that right to repair, anytime you bring it up, I mean, this engaged audience, one of the things I love about this audience, very diverse politically and geographically and rural folks. For anybody in the urban centers that either like just takes their vehicle to the dealership or to their mechanic all the time, doesn't think about it, that isn't inclined to turn wrenches on their lawnmower when it starts sputtering, folks that are used to just dropping things off for repair aren't familiar with this issue. But like you said, people working in agriculture, people working in industry, it's actually a huge deal. There's YouTube channels with like millions of subscribers that just do content on right to repair. What do you read into the Critchley by-election result? I think that it's safe to say that millions more people know her name now than they did 3 months ago. She ran a heck of a campaign. I was actually really impressed with her. She's the type of person I think that we really need in politics, a salt of the earth person, someone that understood grassroots support and as best she could. This is the first time she's ever put her name on the ballot. She really gave Pierre Poilievre a run for his money. He obviously stomped all over everybody with the result, which I think most people were probably anticipating. But I think she deserves a couple moments of our time and commentary.
I think 10% is a great result for an independent that had virtually no name recognition outside of the riding at the start of the campaign. To give you context, Mike de Jong, who was a former provincial former provincial finance minister in British Columbia, got about 16% running as an independent in the Greater Vancouver area. So particularly, when we have this effective two-party system, with a strong sense of party identity across the board, getting anywhere near that level of visibility, that level of support as an independent is impressive. And one thing I'll say for Mr. Poilievre, I'm looking at some of the issues Ms. Critchley brought up, and I think right to repair is an absolute tap-it for Mr. Poilievre to pursue, as the most well-known rural MP in the country now. I think it's a slam dunk. That would be hugely popular in Battle River, Crowfoot, and rural areas like it. And I think a really easy way for Mr. Poilievre to reintroduce himself to the House of Commons and to the legislative branch would be by putting forward enhanced right to repair legislation and protections. I think that would be a really smart thing for him to lift or be inspired by Ms. Critchley.
Yeah, we're hanging out with Rahim Mohamed, National Post journalist. In a second, I want to ask you what this does. What's the forecast say about the wind in the sails of Alberta separation? This will be, by the way, ahead of our one-on-one with Alberta Prosperity Project's Jeff Rath, who will be joining us on the show tomorrow. That'll be the 20th of August. More with Rahim Mohamed in just a second. This conversation happens with the support of our friends at California Closets. Absolutely, bar none, the best in the business when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for your entire home. For some of you, that will mean that dream walk-in closet, the one you already know what you want. You want the drawers that you can slam shut and they slowly close. Some of you want that perfect compartment for your cufflinks, your tie pins, your brooches, those treasured items. Some of you want the chandelier hanging from the ceiling, that closet you've always envisioned. California Closets can build it. It can be more affordable than you think. And oh, by the way, it's guaranteed for life. All of that, and you buy with the confidence from a Canadian-owned operation that's manufacturing every installation right here in our home province of Alberta. The California Closets journey starts with a free consultation. And of course, you can book that today by visiting their website. Learn so much more about what they do at californiaclosets.ca. Some beautiful sunshine in the forecast over the next couple of weeks, and that's really good news for Kuby renewable energy customers. If you've got solar panels on the roof, several months of the year, that'll cover 100% of your electricity, which means it feels a whole lot better when you're opening up your bills. But of course, through the year as well, solar pays itself off with a thing called net metering. You can actually earn credits for the extra power your system produces through the summer and then use that to cut your winter bills. If that's something you'd like to explore, you can check out kuby.ca/solar. That's KUBY.ca for a free quote and more information. Kuby is solar simplified and people powered. And a big shout out to our friends at UCAN Youth Services. This is Real Talk's charity of choice this year, an incredible organization helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. Learn more about their work on their website, ucan.ca. I want to give a shout out to their employment partners. These are big organizations that are looking for skilled and motivated entry-level employees. They're partnering with UCAN to bring on graduates of UCAN's pre-employment programs. That's the Road to Work program. They've also got a wonderful Verto project that you can learn more about. These are young adults that simply need an opportunity. They've had doors slammed in their face for years, and now employers like Tim Hortons, IKEA, and others are seeing the benefits of partnering with UCAN. Learn about those partnerships by visiting their website. That's ucan.ca. We're hanging out with Rahim Mohamed, a National Post in our live chat, powered by Park Power. Jay says, voter turnout says, I got the feeling that Pierre Poilievre got his biggest fans to vote. Anybody indifferent, perhaps, stayed home. Cree says, how embarrassing having to go to a safe riding to win. What a joke. Pierre Poilievre, by the way, Rahim, did talk about an exercise in humility. He said that this whole thing kind of taught him a lot. He learned some valuable lessons about humility and hard work. Obviously, embarrassing for the leader of the opposition, the guy that a lot of people thought could be prime minister, to have to circle back and try to earn his way back into the House of Commons. But are you expecting a different version of Pierre Poilievre? I mean, when he talks about a lesson in humility, I don't expect he'll soften himself up too much. Do you?
Well, I might not be the best person to talk to because I am a sucker, for a good comeback story or a good redemption arc. And, I did feel like there was a lot of genuine emotion in Mr. Poilievre's victory speech. He talked about, kind of the hard scrabble character of a place like Battle River Crowfoot, where, your crops will fail, your businesses will fail, people encounter, substantial challenges on a day-to-day basis. And the custom is kind of when you fall down, you get back up. I loved a line he said about how the people in the riding taught him that success is never a straight line. So for me, I eat that kind of stuff up. I'm quite sentimental with that kind of messaging. But for me, knowing Mr. Poilievre a little bit as a journalist based in Ottawa, and having had a chance to have had a few chats here and there with Mr. Poilievre, it's not so much a different side of him. There's always been two sides of him. There's the kind of attack dog people see in the House of Commons, but on the ground level, when it comes to his constituents and when it comes to Mr. Poilievre as a campaigner, he's always had a good touch with that sort of stuff. He's always had, been quite good one-on-one with voters, been quite good one-on-one with constituents, campaign in, campaign out. He's been in the top 4 or 5 in terms of the number of doors he knocks on. He tends to have, these sorts of, powerful emotional conversations with nurses and waitresses and tradespeople who he encounters on the campaign trail. So I'm not sure it's a different side of Mr. Poilievre as opposed to one he doesn't show the public enough, because I think a lot of us get caught up in the kind of attack dog, sort of insult spewing, sort of aggressive politician he is in the House of Commons. And when he's going at other politicians, he's had that role for quite a long time. He had it in the Harper government. It was a big part of kind of him prosecuting and taking down, and I think doing a lot to shorten Justin Trudeau's political career and put Justin Trudeau to a point where he's not only retired, but he'll have to stay retired. So I think it's more, there's always been this side of Pierre Poilievre. It's just not one a national audience maybe sees quite as much as it ought to.
People can read your work at nationalpost.com. That is where your most recent headline reads, "Separatism and Internal Dissent Fizzle," as Poilievre coasts to victory in rural Alberta. There was that United Party's candidate, Grant Abraham, who had called this a referendum, this by-election, a referendum on Alberta independence, wound up with about 1.5% of the vote. Take us.
He was the first name on the list too, so that should have been a huge advantage.
Yeah.
First of 214. I talked to him and he said, As a kid, I was always the first name on my attendance sheet.
Yeah.
Now it should be paying off for me big time. So that's another advantage Mr. Abraham had that he wasn't able to capitalize on.
But what I think this says is, and again, you got to be careful when you're painting entire ridings or talking. I think they're the eligible voters here. You're talking about 100,000 people, 85,000 people, I believe, eligible voters. You can't say this riding typically thinks this, but it is safe to say that this is a conservative stronghold. It's a conservative riding. I would imagine it has its fair share of folks who would support some form of Alberta sovereignty. But this was not their top priority, quite obviously. If this was a referendum on Alberta's independence, then that referendum was silenced in significant fashion. The most important thing, obviously, was to get the leader of the official opposition back in a position where he can fight to become Canada's next prime minister. But take us into how you perceive this or perhaps what this says to Alberta, what this says to the rest of Canada about the momentum of that Alberta separation movement.
Sure. So we could make some pretty good guesses going in because part of this federal riding overlaps with the provincial riding of Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. So Three Hills is also part of Battle River Crowfoot federally. And there was just a by-election there where Cameron Davies, the leader of the Alberta Republican Party, won about 18% of the vote. So if anything, Battle River Crowfoot would be slightly more conservative and slightly more pro-independence than that riding. So it seems to me that either one, Mr. Poilievre has done enough to speak to the kind of grievances and frustrations of Alberta. So he said a number of times on the campaign trail that the time for Ottawa to tell the West to pay up and shut up is over. He's spoken quite stridently about liberal policies, keeping Alberta resources landlocked and preventing additional pipelines from being built. So there was enough of that rhetoric to appeal to some of the frustration in Alberta. And another thing is I get the sense that Alberta's separatist movement, it's not quite where Quebec's is. Where in Quebec, you see kind of a crisscrossing between the Parti Québécois at the provincial level and the Bloc Québécois at the federal level. It seems to me that the conversation that's being held right now, and I'd be interested in hearing Jeff Raff speak to this, but it seems to me that the conversation right now on a potential referendum on independence next year and Alberta's future within Canada. It's a conversation that's being had at the provincial level. Doesn't strike me as something that's having much of an effect on federal politics right now.
You can read Rahim Mohamed's work in the National Post at nationalpost.com. Make sure you give him a follow on social media as well. My man, it's always a pleasure welcoming you to the show, especially as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as you are today. Thanks for doing it, pal.
Great to be here. Always happy to talk Alberta politics.
All right, my man. We'll chat again soon. That's Rahim Mohamed from the National Post. In just a moment, the strategists, Zain, Velji, Stephen Carter, will join us with their take. Alberta Girl in our live chat says there must be something more interesting to talk about than another victory by Conservatives in Alberta. Well, this is a pretty big one. This is a pretty big story. Pierre Poilievre's back. Everybody was wondering, what will the number be? So we're covering it. Cliff, meantime, Johnny, I'm not sure if you saw this comment in here. Cliff says, which wine or beer do you think pairs better with this election result? Cliff, I believe, making a deft reference, a very cheeky and fabulous reference to one of our most recent episodes where we welcomed folks from the booze business to talk about trade barriers, legislation, sneaky taxes, and other fascinating subject matter. You can catch that. That was the Real Talk Happy Hour a couple of episodes ago. Cliff, I don't know that anybody didn't expect this election result. As a matter of fact, some of you were giving me shit for proclaiming that Pierre Poilievre was going to win this entire thing. You said that was undemocratic. You said that it was irresponsible, and admittedly, it does a bit of a disservice to those other candidates that threw their hat in the ring. But let's be real. This was not only Pierre Poilievre's riding to lose, but had he won by only, let's say, 75% of the vote, the optics of that one would have been tough. We'll ask our next guest coming up in just a quick second. Before we do, I want to remind you that the team at North Road Investment Council this summer is taking time with the discerning families that they're working with to ensure that retirement goals are on track. That's right. This is the time of year where a lot of successful Canadians are pausing and reflecting on their career and retirement goals. And at North Road Investment Council, that's their jam. They're working with Canadians who want to ensure that their wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. The typical North Road client comes from analytical, detail-driven professions, engineers, architects, dentists, usually about $2 million in investable assets, looking for a studied hand, a steady voice. If that sounds like you, the team at North Road is interested and open to a conversation. They know life's financial journey doesn't always follow a straight path. You can learn more about their digital risk advisory service. That's what sets them apart from all of their competitors on their website. That's northroadic.com. Start a conversation today built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment with North Road Investment Council. Our friends at Athabasca University, of course, taking applications for fall. Their number of, hundreds of programs and courses. But here's the deal. As Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you, if real life stands in the way and you don't get onto their website, that's athabascau.ca until next week or next month or 3 months from now, it doesn't matter. You don't miss anything because AU is designed to fit your schedule. You can read about the AU Advantage on their website. By choosing Athabasca University, you're benefiting from their commitment to flexible study options, accessibility for students around the world, personalized learning plans, and a supportive community. All of the details, including information on financial supports, transfer credits, and more at athabascau.ca. And our friends at Friesen Brothers want to remind you your next opportunity to knock 15% off your grocery bill, as long as it's $75 or more, coming up on the 1st of September. They do that every single month at all 16 locations, but it's also Hatch chili season. These are these incredible, really mild, kind of buttery, smoky chilies that they bring in from New Mexico. Only available for a limited time. They integrate wonderfully into salads, breads, Gouda cheese. New Mexico, Hatch in particular, called the chili capital of the world, and you can read more about it. They call it the champagne of the chili world. Just a little bit of heat, and of course a real treat. Available exclusively at Friesen Brothers. You can find them online at friesen.com. We recommend you check out their Family Essentials flyer. We love it. We're proud to partner with Friesen Brothers, celebrating 70 years in 2025. Stephen Carter, Zain, Velji in just a second, co-hosts of the wildly popular Strategists podcast. We're talking on this special edition of the show about Pierre Poilievre's by-election win in Battle River Crowfoot. He served notice, Poilievre did, to the Prime Minister of Canada that as soon as Parliament resumes, the Conservatives are coming for him.
This fall, as Parliament returns, we will not only oppose out-of-control Liberal inflation, crime, immigration, cost of living, and housing prices, but we will propose real solutions for safe streets, secure borders, a stronger and sovereign country with bigger take-home pay for our people. We will put Canada first, and we will do so in a way that will make our country self-reliant and make our people capable of earning paychecks that buy affordable food and homes in safe neighborhoods.
It sounds a lot like the message he campaigned on. Is this smart strategy? Let's ask a couple of guys who have won a whole bunch of elections and lost a few as well. Co-hosts of the fabulous Strategist podcast. It's Zain, Velji, and Stephen Carter. Welcome back, gentlemen. Carter, you look appalled by my introduction.
Yeah, I mean, bringing up the losses is just unfair. It's like us talking about, your vocal qualities during the Athabasca U read of their commercial piece, right? Like, or the champagne of
The champagne of chilies, of hatch.
I mean, I'm a little disappointed you didn't say the champagne of podcasts.
Well, because I'm teeing you up, and here's what I do is when I officially kick this off, I say the stars today in the spotlight as our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, the best or nothing. It's Zain, Velji, and Stephen Carter.
Oh, wow.
Jespersen.
Wow. Mercedes-Benz. I mean, really high-end stuff, man. Like, very well done.
I mean, quite frankly, the
Peppers
best.
thing I thought brought you down, but you've come back with the Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, well, there's a metaphor here if you'd like to use it.
I mean, the investment stuff was good, but buying an 89-cent chili really didn't send a message that you were, successful as I was hoping for you.
See, But this is your problem, Carter. I think this is your blind spot, is that Hatch chilies, I'm not sure that they're 89 cents, and it's very risky to start talking grocery prices as a high-profile person if you don't actually understand the challenges people are experiencing in the grocery aisles today.
No one expects me to be in touch. That's the difference between you and me.
Carter
this is why we go to the elite, right? Yes. No one knows.
Yeah. Zain?
Can't you see those two identical awards behind him? This guy is major elite.
There's
Stephen
3
Carter.
awards up there, and one of them.
Yeah, they're just duplicates of the same one.
Yeah.
How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great,
I made a commitment
man.
to be a better version of myself, so I'm not making fun of your advertisers. Carter only has one shtick, so it's already tired itself out.
I also made fun of his voice.
My advertisers love it. We find a way to seamlessly integrate them into our conversations time and time again. What people don't know, obviously, is that we send you both royalty checks for all of this. It's all just a bit. It's just a bit. Pierre Poilievre wins with 80% of the vote, a couple of points less than Damien Kirk. I'm not sure that matters. I'm not sure that we need to focus on the nitty-gritty, but do we all agree that if he would have won with 65 to 70% of the vote, he would have had an optical issue? Has he totally redeemed himself today?
Has he redeemed himself? Am I winning in the easiest conservative riding in Canada to win in? I mean, is that redemption? No, I mean, there was a group of people who were like, oh, we should watch out for this independent. This independent could do something. We all knew the independent wasn't going to do something. We talked about it on our podcast that this was overblown and overplayed. It is exactly the outcome that we projected and expected. There is no, redemption for Pierre Poilievre for running in the easiest conservative riding in Canada, and that's how it should be articulated.
Zain, do you agree?
Listen, a rhinestone sage from the prairies says it best. That don't impress me much.
Oh,
Jespo.
Nice.
I don't think she's technically from the prairies.
I know, but we own her because she's been our parade marshal. She has a soft spot for this place.
She appeared in the Oilers. She's actually from Windsor, Ontario. It says.
But we're taking her back. Speaking of which, Windsor, Ontario, now a conservative seat. So listen. Ooh. He loses in the East. He wins in the West, but he's not fundamentally changing what that is at its core and what's in his core, in his heart. And frankly, he may not be able to. That's the concern here. We could quibble about 65 and 80. If he had 65%, it would be a 2-day problem. The real fundamental issue is now that he's back, what changes? And if the answer is nothing, that's a bet he's taking. I'm not saying it's a failing bet or a losing bet, but at this current present moment, when our beloved dear leader, Mark Carney, is polling at 60% favorability in fucking Alberta, it's a tough hill for Pierre Poilievre to climb. And yes, he may just think that and come up with the conclusion that Mark Carney at some point will stop being Mark Carney. He'll just be another liberal in a stack of liberals, and he will be defined by liberal character and things that liberals do. And we know historically liberals are not immune to that, but it is a bet. And it is a bet with not your best cards, because there is a better solution for Pierre Poilievre, which is pivot course, be less of a prick, be more propositional, think about the future, be less alienating. But he may not have that in him, and he may not want to make that choice. And everything we've heard from Jenny Byrne in the last couple of weeks with that podcast appearance, in which she's, of course, trying to save her ass as much as she's trying to cover his, suggests that there's no change coming forward. So 65 or 80 would be a one-day story. The bigger story is Pierre Poilievre's here. He's probably not changing what's at his core, and that's a bet that seems relatively uphill with a steep incline, given what the Liberals are doing right now, which is looking a lot like fucking Conservatives, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to convince, if you're Jenny Byrne or somebody else that's going to convince Pierre Poilievre to be less of a prick, then you've got to convince him that the reason he lost the federal election was because he was being a prick. And I'm not sure that's the reason why he lost the federal election. Carter, what do you think? Would you advise him, if you were a strategist, would you advise him to be less of a prick or to double down?
Well, I mean, you may as well advise, water not to flow downhill as to tell him that he's, not a prick, or that he's behaving like a prick. He is that guy. That guy was the guy who had the super high favorables when Trudeau was in place. The problem that I'm seeing is that the exact words that are coming out of his mouth, the way that he's saying them, he is coming back to being the guy that, could have beaten Trudeau, but can't beat Carney. And that, it is a foundational problem. This wasn't the real election that we need to be talking about. The by-election never was something that he was worried about. He's worried about January 2026. January 2026 is when he's actually going to be tested, and we'll find out whether or not he's actually going to be a strong candidate for the Conservative Party moving forward.
Okay, for the audience, you're talking about his leadership review.
His leadership review. This audience knows Ryan. This audience is smart.
I'm just assuming there's going to be some members of some of your followers, Carter, that are just going to need to be spoon-fed a little bit.
It's just I
want to welcome them to the big leagues.
I bring them up a level, right? I assume they don't, that they're not idiots.
Yes.
And they know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
It's important for us to pretend this way, but Trudeau, he needed a Trudeau in order to look good.
Yeah.
When it's a Carney, he doesn't have that same opportunity. And I think this leadership review is going to be meaningful, and it's going to be difficult for him to win, even if there aren't heir apparents standing in the wings. And I think that there may be more heir apparents in the wings than we're aware of.
Zain, did Poilievre take the pressure off himself with the win? When it comes to this leadership review, we were just talking to Rahim Mohamed in his piece in the National Post. He essentially suggests the headline and suggests, two parts. I'll ask you guys about Alberta separation and the like coming up in just a little bit. But he says internal dissent fizzles as Poilievre coasts to victory in rural Alberta. Obviously, there'll be a united front publicly. But what's your speculation? What's your gut sense when it comes to where the caucus is at and where the Conservative movement is at with their current leader?
Look, I like that you're inciting brown-on-brown violence with Rahim and I. This is good. I like this. This is very, very helpful.
Very progressive.
He pulled back. Zain pulls back the curtain on the entire episode. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Listen. Rahim wants to be right. Of course he does. Of course he wants this to be a settled situation. Carter's right. It's not a settled situation until January. That being said, I'm a bit more, bullish on Poilievre's chances. Calgary, winter, travel, difficult, probably fine. However, my concern for Pierre Poilievre is not that people will look at what he is and who he is and trade him for something more centrist. My concern for Pierre Poilievre is the same concern that I always have for Conservatives, and I put concern in air quotes because, oh, shucks, I have concern for them. But it's a movie that the three of us have been watching, and your listeners, your high-quality, well-educated Mercedes-Benz class listeners, as Carter would like you to know,
Thank you.
all know that we've seen this movie where they get outflanked from the right, that Pierre Poilievre gets traded to a more Republican-style leader, not a more progressive conservative style leader. And I think that is a concern for the Conservative Party. That is the concern for Pierre Poilievre. So one of the reasons that you see Pierre Poilievre continuing down the track, which sounds crazy because we've gone from this, if I can just quickly kind of open up a different bracket.
Please.
The journey we have been on as Canadians, as we've observed the Conservative Party, when we had Scheer to O'Toole to Poilievre getting further right from where we then had Harper. There is a world now in which O'Toole, who looked like the right-wing choice, became the centrist choice. Poilievre, who seemed like the impossible, prickly, leader for a movement that would be smaller rather than bigger, was up in the polls and then lost, could be traded for something even further right than him. That sounds crazy on paper, but in practice, this is where Western democracies are heading. And in one strange way, Alberta has had an advanced preview of this movie because we've seen it multiple times play out in our province. And that is the worry that I have for Pierre Poilievre. So no, I don't think Rahim is right. I don't think things have fizzled. People will probably be taking a nice little respite. But let's be clear. There's also a group of people within the conservative movement that are hoping that Mark Carney gets defined as just another liberal, and they want that mantle for themselves. This would be the quickest way to prime ministership that many believe. So no, it's not fizzled, especially that he's taken the L, especially that they don't acknowledge that they lost the last election, which many do not seem to want to do, including Jenny Byrne, and to the same extent Pierre Poilievre, based on his messaging. There will be people ready to take that mantle. And I think the worry for Pierre Poilievre is that they could be coming from both sides, and especially more damning for the party could be that they come from the right.
Carter, you're nodding. Jenny Byrne's name has popped up several times in this interview already. Is she on death watch when it comes to her career with the Conservatives, or has she totally redeemed herself as well with this by-election win?
Oh, I mean, no one has totally redeemed themselves. But Jenny is saying that she's not going to be running the next campaign. But running the next campaign is in the eye of the beholder. There's often people who are named as campaign managers. There's people who are named as, in control or who are running things. But there's often a back room that the leader is discussing things with. I suspect we'll see Jenny Byrne for a long time, maintaining her strong relationships with the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre in particular. I think that the problem is that there, but for luck, we would have won. Seems to be the battle cry of the Conservatives. There, but for luck. It wasn't luck that changed it. It was a foundational change and a recognition of the personality of Pierre Poilievre that foundationally changed the outcome. It wasn't like Mark Carney just cruised in because people were like, oh, we really want a Mark Carney to be our next prime minister.
Right.
What it was I don't want Justin Trudeau. I don't want Justin Trudeau to be our prime minister anymore. I will settle for Pierre Poilievre. And then as soon as another option came available, we all jumped to Mark Carney. And it's not, there has to be a fundamental change in the product, if you will, a change in the service offering of the Conservative Party if we're going to go back there. Because we've all had the opportunity to accept Pierre Poilievre, and in fact, we rejected him. And normally I'm like, I don't want to see leaders change. I don't want Bonnie Crombie to be overthrown in the Ontario Liberal Party in her leadership review coming up in a couple of weeks here. I don't think that that's necessarily the best play. I think you should try and keep your leaders from one election to the next. Having said that, Pierre Poilievre is the exception to the rule. His product went up. We were all going to buy it, and then we all decided we didn't want to. And I think that is damning on him and damning in a way that he's never going to recover from. If the Conservatives want something vaguely resembling a victory in the future, they have to walk away.
Zain?
We had the chance to buy the best version of the product at the best price, and we chose not to.
Exactly.
And I think recovering from that is very difficult, right? Unless you put it, to extend the analogy into stupid territory, but unless you put it on sale, right? People don't want it again. You had best value, best time, best price, and the purchase was not, people did not transact. I hate to make our politics seem so transactional. And in fact, many would argue that it is, right? Carter,
it is transactional.
Of course.
Yeah.
I believe less so in that than I did maybe half a decade ago, but that's a different conversation. But in this particular case, I think the analogy is a strong one that Carter put on the table. People had a chance to take Pierre Poilievre as his highest value without any blemishes, without having the baggage of governance, with the liberal in place, and they didn't buy it. And then maybe you could argue that with the moment, the acute, rare moment that Pierre Poilievre could not meet, and he will be there for the next one, because that next moment will not be as acute, will not be as rare. But I would argue that next moment could just be the moment we're living in. That's not outside of the scope of possibility. That next moment, that next election could be as acute, and he could not meet it, especially if personality, integrity, character, propositional ability are factored into it, which they likely will be. I do want to take one. Can I take one quick detour and just mention one thing very quickly, which I think is really important, which is Carter's point around Jenny Byrne not running the next campaign. One of the things we try to do with our listenership, which I'd also just offer here, is let people know that modern campaigns have changed significantly. that the person running the campaign, it's such an important point by Stephen, does not need to run the campaign in order to run the campaign. Today's modern campaigns are based on message and paid. What can you pay for what to get your message out? And I should say, in my humble opinion, everything else helps on the edges, ground game, etc. It's important. It's meaningful, it's useful, but it helps on the edges. And those that control what the paid message looks like and what the overall campaign message and narrative are, those are the folks running modern day campaigns. And to be clear, you don't need to be on a campaign to run that. You don't even need to be remotely associated with the inner layer of the campaign in order to have your influence heard on that. And in many cases, for the last half decade in this country, the people running the campaign are not the people running the campaign. And I think that's very, very important for people to understand, that often things around message and paid and resource allocation, which are the biggest things in a modern campaign, those decisions are made by a circle that's often outside of the campaign, that's whispering into the ear of the leader, that even takes that responsibility away from the campaign manager. I know this is a nerdy deep dive on how campaigns are run, but Carter brought up the point, and I think it's important for folks to understand that next time they see the word campaign director, campaign manager, specifically in the federal context, that there are many ways that we've seen these campaigns run. And I mention this because Carter and I have just come off of two campaigns a year ago, plus for me on the Nenshi leadership, and for Carter, continuing and actively working on the municipal side. So the main reason I bring this up is the municipal side actually opens up this pathway for people to absorb this and learn about it a bit more as well.
Okay, so first of all, we love that. We love the deep dives. We appreciate the insights into strategy. That's why I think you guys have built, one of the most significant and loyal podcast audiences in the country. I want to remind everybody, we're talking to Stephen Carter, Zain, Velji of the Strategists. You can watch them on YouTube. I'm not cutting you loose yet, Carter. I'm just pumping your tires. And of course, you can find them wherever you get your podcasts as well. We do have some questions from audience members, including Ms. KD, about the municipal election campaigns, and we'll wrap with that. But a couple of things sort of front of mind right now. You talk about Pierre Poilievre, you got to talk about Mark Carney. We've obviously been talking about the performance of this Liberal government to this point, including this trade war, this tariff war with the United States. And I think for the most part, including our conversation, recent one with Senator Charles Adler, everybody's kind of looking at 2026, the renewal, the renegotiation of CUSMA, basically the free trade deal with the U.S. as the real deadline. But Carney had put a couple of deadlines in front of Canadians. On election night on the 28th of April, he talked about free trade in Canada by July 1st, and then kind of quickly walked it back and said, well, we'll be talking to the provinces by July 1st. That's kind of come and gone. You've seen negotiations with the United States, and we talked in a recent episode about how Michelle Rempel-Garner, the Conservative Calgary MP, has been hitting Carney on the elbows up metaphor, asking him to remind Canadians how that was supposed to go, because tariffs have, in many sectors, including steel and aluminum, have doubled. How do you assess Carney's performance to this point? What are the mile markers that you're looking at for him? If the leadership review for Poilievre is January 2026, what's the one for Carney? When does the rubber have to start hitting the road?
Well, it's going to be really tricky because it's not like Carney is negotiating with people who are sane.
Right.
He's dealing with 11 lunatics. Donald Trump is just but one. The interprovincial trade problem is not going to go away just by willing it from the federal government. It is a provincial issue, and the federal government has taken steps to do what they can to remove the interprovincial trade barriers. But ultimately, it falls to the 10 premiers to actually make that happen for Canadians across the country. We've seen some movement on reducing the interprovincial trade barriers, but we haven't seen enough. And that ultimately boils down to, what are we going to see from these premiers? Are they going to take the steps that need to be taken? And it's the same thing with Donald Trump. Mark Carney can talk about having deadlines all he wants. I mean, Trump throws deadlines out and then walks away from them as fast as he can. I mean, he doesn't achieve much. Our Donald Trump, he blusters very, very well, but his achievements are actually very, very minimal. So when Mark Carney is throwing praise his way or jumping on the bandwagon to try and motivate him, he's doing all he can do to get us a deal that removes these tariffs. But ultimately, the man is not a robust partner. He is a lunatic that they've put in charge. And I think that in time, the people who are really going to suffer are the ones who did quick deals with him, and the ones who are going to be in the best possible position are the ones who are going to be sticking to their guns and coming up for a really good deal for Canada or for their nation that they're negotiating for. This idea that you're going to get a good deal quickly from Donald Trump, that's lunacy. Donald Trump doesn't know what a good deal is if it smacked him in the head with a 4-iron.
A 4-iron? Who can hit a 4-iron?
No one can. That's why you try and smack him in the head with it.
Carter, I was trying to hit yesterday a 5-iron off the lush fairway at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. That's Alberta's #1 public golf course, and you can book your tee times today at theranchgolf.com.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just found myself marveling at the natural beauty of that 18-hole course with its robust banquet facilities and just forgetting, amid the beauty of it all, the fact that I shot 22 over par yesterday. It didn't even bother me one bit.
You know what? I mean, there's a lot of benefits to golfing at the ranch. One of them is that you will not see Zain or I there.
No. In fact, I was there. I was sitting in the parking lot of my Mercedes-Benz S-Class having my chili.
Yes.
I was having
eating your Hatch chilies.
Yeah.
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up because I saved this to read in cheeky fashion after the interview, but perhaps I'll introduce it now. Jillian in our live chat, which of course you know is powered by Park Power. That's your friendly local utilities provider at parkpower.ca.
Yeah.
Jillian says, yo, I got the Hatch chili Gouda cheese at Friesen Brothers. It was all caps. So good. She says, I ate it all, and it's not too hot for those of you who consider mayonnaise hot. So that from Jillian, a firsthand review. Obviously, her consumer activity driven by what she's hearing here on Real Talk, Alberta's #1 political podcast.
She ate all that cheese, but she hasn't had a shit in days. So, there's some victories and some losses.
This is a beloved Real Talk audience member that you're referencing. Hey, speaking of movements, you see what I did there? Speaking of
God, so good.
Thank you.
So good.
And actually, I could have doubled down and said, speaking of separation movements, the state or the status of Alberta separation. We're going to be talking to Jeff Rath, who's one of the more prominent Alberta separatists. He's going to be joining me on the show tomorrow, and I'm sure that a lot of folks were looking. It wasn't the #1 story, not even close, in this Battle River Crowfoot by-election, but this is kind of the recurring story through the summer. Will Thomas Lukaszuk and the Forever Canadian petition get their 300,000 signatures? Will Jeff Rath and his Alberta Prosperity Project, that's the Separatists, get their 177,000 signatures? The status of Alberta separation, Zain, does the by-election factor in at all? Did it tell us anything about the momentum or lack of momentum in real life?
No, I don't count anything in summer, so no.
Yeah.
But also, like, being less tongue-in-cheek, no. And I also think those metrics are nice horse race style metrics. Chase the clock, chase the number. Will they get there? This is an arms building exercise. This is an exercise of people signing up people to lists and mobilizing them. Those numbers are fictitious and probably not reachable in the most part. This is about Lukaszuk. Judge that campaign for whatever it is. I think that's often what we progressives do, is judge things that are not perfect from the sidelines. But what it is doing is it's building momentum, it's building resources, it's aligning people to something, and it's magnetizing people to something. The number, it's not going to be hit, but that's fine. That's fine. It's about people doing something. It's about people moving in one direction. And I think what we've been seeing amidst this cloud of progressive anxiety or lethargic inaction as conservative movements around the Western world have been kind of running amok and seemingly running free. This is helpful to build those arms, but the numbers are not what I think that at least the Forever Canada petition are after. Carter might disagree.
What do you think, Carter?
I think that Zane's completely wrong. I think that the problem is that the Forever Canada petition is going to get X number of signatures. It'll be far below the number of signatures that are required to actually implement this. But let's say just for shits and giggles, it's going to be 100,000 signatures. And then Jeff Rath's group's going to get another 100,000 signatures because that's the number of signatures that are available. They wind up, and then Premier Smith is going to say, oh, look at that. There was 200,000 signatures. We're going to run this petition. We're going to run this referendum question anyways. Because at the end of the day, the government gets to decide whether or not there's a referendum question. They don't need no stinking signatures. And what does Thomas Lukaszuk have at that point? 100,000 pieces of paper? Watching these people line up to sign this petition, outside of...
Oh, my God.
I mean, give me a break. It's just
0 for 2. I just need you to know Carter's 0 for 2 this morning. This take is going to age poorly. And he also got his absolute ass handed to him on a pod we recorded this morning by Phillips. So please listen to our most. I usually don't plug the pod.
Fairness,
but there's 20 minutes of Shannon Phillips taking Stephen Carter to the fucking woodshed without Zain Velji interrupting, which probably is an added bonus for people.
By the way, Dubious, who's one of our YouTube channel members and has one of the greatest handles on the internet, Dubious, wanted to let us know how much they've been appreciating Shannon Phillips on the Strategist. Dubious says misses Shannon as an MLA, but says she's doing a remarkable job on the Strategist. I think she's a great ad as well. Carter, did you want to defend yourself before the onslaught?
Don't
I got my ass handed to me. Had to resort to the argument, the ends justify the means. That's where I was.
Well, Shannon's very good. She's very good.
Hammer.
Yeah, but do you really? By the way, first of all, I asked you guys to stay till 9:30, and we're past that. Can I keep you for a few more minutes, or are you missing a meeting, or what?
You know what? We do the show for free, and you take
got
advantage of us every time. Oh, can we keep you on? Like, we're going to say no to your audience.
Well, you can say no to the audience if you must. Like I don't know if you have one of your flailing campaigns, Carter, that needs you on Zoom right away. I don't know. I got questions about your flailing campaigns coming up in just a second.
Are you going to run them remotely from Calgary?
But first, I just like it just seems to me like
you do another read just to break us off of this. I just want to go back to Mercedes-Benz in the S-Class. Fuck you, Ryan Jespersen. That's all I have to say.
Okay, and I love you too. Carter shows his love and admiration in weird and mysterious ways. But your take on Thomas Lukaszuk and what he's doing, this Forever Canadian petition. Jeff Rath is going to go up one side and down the other of it tomorrow on the show. That's the 20th of August right here on Real Talk. But I will say this, like your perspective on it is very cynical. And if nothing else, and Jeff will make, I'll get ahead of him in advance, he'll make a compelling argument that actually the question that Thomas is asking is actually pointless and doesn't compel the government to do anything. And I think we can discuss that, but you have a very cynical view. I think, if nothing else, it's a rallying cry. Don't you think?
I agree with you completely.
What
Carter.
are you talking about here? What are you guys... You pretending like on some level that either question is going to have some sort of outcome for whether or not we can be a separatist?
For a change.
I mean, this is bullshit. Lukaszuk has put in place a bullshit mechanism that is not going to generate anything vaguely resembling a positive outcome. Jeff Rath hasn't conformed to the Clarity Act or any other. This is bullshit that has been put forward as an opportunity for Danielle Smith to make herself stronger, and Thomas Lukaszuk has played right into it. And Naheed Nenshi has walked away from the opportunity. This is a failure on all fronts to create something vaguely resembling an opposition to Danielle Smith across the province. It is bullshit, and I can't believe that we're even talking about it.
Zain?
Okay. So two things. Number one, I've known this man for a long time, and when he uses that register of vocal quality, I'm pretty sure this is a bit.
His microphone is tamping down. Like your microphone is trying to shut you up.
He can't
Bullshit.
resist. He can't resist. I don't think he's being sincere, because if he were, he'd be the dumbest political strategist to ever set foot.
How dare you, sir?
Which look at. There you go. I see it in the smirk. Secondly, Carter,
I've said it from the beginning that this is a bad play.
Listen. Who cares what Lukaszuk's end goal is, other than he's not trying to get 300,000. If this question is appearing on our ballots, as you said, with the government's discretion and nothing else, let's build around it. Let's sign people up. Let's get people rowing in one direction. None of that has been happening with any other group. And whether you can quibble about if Lukaszuk's frame is right, if the logo is right, if the name, who gives a shit? To Brian's point, this is a rallying cry for people to say and do something around it. And it's at the very least, a collection and a holding pen for that, so people can then start moving together in that one direction with when that thing happens in 26, 27, whenever that ends up happening, Carter. I assume 26.
May 26th, we're all going to be going to the polls to re-elect Danielle Smith, and it's going to be a gong show because we don't have an opposition, and Thomas Lukaszuk is the opposition to to Danielle Smith at this point, and an opposition with 100,000 signatures isn't an opposition. It's just a little movement that we'll forget about in 3 to 4 months.
Zain, obviously, you know Nahad Nenshi well. You've worked on his campaigns. What do you make? I mean, Carter basically says he's been asleep at the switch through all of this. Do you agree, or is there some strategy to stepping aside or stepping into the shadows a little bit and allowing a scenario to play itself out before you really capitalize on it?
So on the separatist issue, I have a struggle with that one, because if I go back to what's happened, let's use Brexit as a comparison, right? Which is that, so let me actually go back. My fundamental fear, this I think Carter will agree with, is that separatism, either as a question that succeeds or fails marginally, is a real issue for this province. Understatement. But that is like, it's important to know, like, that is my ultimate fear, that this thing I do take seriously, this threat I take seriously, because we have seen issues that poll at 15, 20, 30% become 50 plus 1% issues really quickly. Really, really quickly. And my concern with the NDP getting involved aggressively at the forefront, rather than drifting on the success of organizations and movements, is that if the NDP become the key opponent to this, this becomes another 50-50 political jump ball like anything in the province. And this is not another anything like the province policy. This is not another anything like the province jump ball. And we've seen that happen with Brexit, where you had a mealy-mouthed leader try to give 15 minutes to a portion of their party. That portion bastardized what Brexit actually meant, found one or two key things, lied about them, put them up front and center, and the majority of people said, okay, this is a 50-50 issue between Labour and some wing of the Conservatives, and voted in that direction. And the whole narrative was this can never happen. It was a 20% issue that became a 50 plus 1% issue during the end of it.
And you think that Jeff Rath is going to come up there tomorrow and on the Real Talk show with Ryan Jespersen, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, come up with some sort of cogent argument that is actually based in fact? Or do you think that they're going to do what they've been doing, which is misrepresenting, saying that we have enough money, we can afford to pay for our own armed forces, we can afford to do everything, we'll have extra money in our pockets because we're not a part of Canada? That's what they're saying. Jeff Rath's not going to get onto Ryan's show tomorrow and make a cogent argument based on some sort of, it'll all be based on misinformation. And Ryan's going to have to do the best job he possibly can to say, no, that's actually wrong. That's actually factually inaccurate. But I don't know. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think
why are you yelling at me? We're saying the same thing.
Because he's passionate. You're passionate, Carter, aren't you?
This is bullshit.
Just because you got owned 3 times in the last 3 hours doesn't mean that you need to yell at someone who agrees with you.
You know who else has been owning things in the past 3 hours is the satisfied customers at Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, proud presenters of this feature interview with Zain, Velji, and Stephen Carter. Over to you, Steve.
Carter, we're saying the same thing, man. They're gonna find 1 or 2 appealing nuggets, right, that do not have to be based in fact. They're gonna plaster that. And what we've seen with the movie before with Brexit is that the opposing forces give you a laundry list around why it's not a good idea. And the proposing forces or the proponents will give you 1 or 2 good sounding things that then they'll also say, you can keep your Canadian passport. We'll still tap into the Canada for military support. Oh yeah, by the way, we'll still get our, these transfers will get better. We'll just be sad. And people will be like, that sounds good. This is my concern, right? This is my concern. It's a 20% issue that turns into a 50% issue. And I think this is to answer Ryan's question, because I do want to, allow him to host. This is where my concern for the NDP taking a key.
Why would we let Ryan host when we have ourselves? Why wouldn't we just drive forward and make this the best possible podcast it can be, right? Instead of bringing Ryan in and allowing him to bring us down.
Stephen, I think when people go
to a whole different level, the two of us.
Yeah, John, if you could just
do that for Mercedes-Benz.
John, if you could just show my screen for a second. Carter, I think when people go to ryanjespersen.com and they click on the connect link, where they click on book Ryan, And they inquire about hiring one of Alberta's most prominent and experienced event hosts to host their events. The reason they do that is because they know I bring passion and credibility to every event I host, including Tee Up for Mental Health at the Derrick Golf and Country Club coming up this Thursday, and at Tee Up for Tots at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge coming up on Friday in support of the Stollery Children's Hospital. Again, that's RyanJespersen.com. Connect and book Ryan. Over to you, Stephen.
Do you pay yourself for those, or do you just kind of let them
it's all it's sort of a way to circumvent taxes. My accountant keeps letting me know that it's all part of a strategic plan here. I
would imagine
to pay
that
less
someone
to the
like
feds.
you has set up multiple companies to kind of launder
numbered companies.
You don't have to pay as much taxes.
It's not laundered. It's reallocated. The premier appearing in Edmonton just a couple of days ago, and I'll reference reporting, astute reporting by Stephen Sandor at the Edmonton Journal. The premier squaring off with a tense crowd, estimated, by the way, to be about 700 people at this Alberta Next panel in Edmonton. And the premier was asked twice by members of the public in attendance if she would be willing to sign Thomas Lukaszuk's Forever Canada. Technically, it's the Alberta Forever Canada petition. The premier did not answer yes or no on both occasions when she was asked by members of the public at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel in Edmonton's West End. Shouldn't this be an easy answer for the premier? I mean, you got to plant your flag at some point. She's come on this show before. She's talked about it on other episodes, on other podcasts. She said that she doesn't support Alberta separation, but you and I, Carter, have spoken in your most recent appearance right here in our studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton.
Oh my God, what a great studio.
Thanks, buddy. But Danielle Smith, at some point, to be deadly serious here, you're either in or you're out, right? Like you got to, at some point, you can't satiate the separatists while insisting that you don't support them. At some point, the premier will have to say in plain language whether or not she believes that Alberta's future is in or outside of Canada. I understand that there are probably gripes and grievances when it comes to Lukaszuk in particular. He's a very polarizing political figure himself. I'm not sure that she would want to give him the boost that would come with her signing the petition. But at some point, doesn't she have to say flat out where she stands on this?
Let's call it the way it is. She is a separatist. She is separating. She is using the rhetoric and the language of separation. She may say, oh, I want to remain a part of Canada, but she is ultimately a separatist in the way that she speaks and the way that she acts. So I don't see her ever taking a stand that says, I want to remain in Alberta, outside of raw words that mean nothing. The words that actually mean something are the ones that she says when she says we're getting screwed. We aren't getting screwed as being part of Canada. We are part of a bigger and better nation because we are there. And that is what we should be focused on. Instead, she's focused on using rhetoric and body language and the Alberta Next panel, which is a propaganda exercise at best, to make it appear like she's in some fashion advocating for Albertans when really she's advocating for a separate Alberta outside of Canada. And she will never, ever sign a declaration that says that she wants Alberta to remain a part of Canada. Okay. She will never, ever campaign on that level.
In our live chat, Jill says, and I'm not just reading this because of her opening line, but it certainly helps. She says, Zain and Jespo are right. She says, complacency in these referendums is really dangerous. Quebec stayed in Canada by like a lone percentage point. Britain left Europe because they were like 2% short. She says, at the very least, Lukaszuk is encouraging folks to wake up. Gizmo, thanks for your YouTube channel membership, says, Thomas is showing the type of patriotism that I wish was felt by many other Canadians. Says, I'm proud of him, and I'm watching from New Brunswick, where basically nobody's ever heard of him. Zain, if you're head Nenshi, the number one thing that you're probably wanting to do, if mid-next year, let's say Albertans do go to the polls, let's say Danielle Smith pulls a Doug Ford and wants to extend her mandate at a time where she sees the opposition languishing, then it's very simple. You make this, in so many ways as Jason Kenney made the 2019 election a referendum on the carbon tax. You make it, forget about the referendum question on a ballot during a municipal election. You turn the next provincial election into a referendum on Alberta separation. And if Danielle Smith does not say that she is proudly the premier of a Canadian province, then all of a sudden she rolls the dice big time. Would you agree? I mean, can you get more than half of Albertans to vote in a provincial election for a party led by a person that'll waffle when asked about that province's future in Canada? I would say no way.
So yes, and there's also the added element that we're going to probably have both of those votes at the same time.
Yeah.
That is not going to be independent of one another from a timing perspective. You will mark one ballot and then have to mark another. Then enters the now more American sort of concept of split ballots. Voting for Danielle Smith, who will be mealy-mouthed, right, on separatism. And I agree with Carter's assessment, to be clear. If she's not in Canada, then she's out. That is my take, 100%. But she'll be mealy-mouthed about it, as she was at that forum in Edmonton. Can you vote for Danielle Smith but still vote to stay? That becomes the question for the NDP. How do they attract those folks that have never voted for the NDP before and haven't considered them, but they find Danielle Smith on this issue so objectionable that they vote to stay in Canada and they vote for the NDP as a result? And I think they have to ensure that that split ticketing, which I know isn't the correct term, but it's the one that we borrow from the U.S., remains at a minimum if that's the question. The issue then fundamentally gets even muddier, though, Ryan, if Danielle Smith does something which I think is in her power to do that she needs to be called out for immediately, which is she is a separatist, but she also runs and drapes herself with the Canadian flag to show that she isn't.
Yeah.
Because there's a very good chance that she tries to do that immediately, which is that she calls the question. It has enough of a buoying perspective. It's a 20 to 30% issue right now in the consciousness. It stays alive. The panels keep it alive. Let's be clear. She's the one keeping this question alive. So she needs it to stay alive until 26. And then she keeps it alive. And as soon as it drops, runs and drapes herself in a Canada flag, tries to outflank the NDP on that position because she knows about the splits ticket phenomenon that she needs to maintain and even get a percentage of those people who say, stay in Canada, Danielle Smith. I'm okay. I'm okay enough with the fact that she may not be a separatist. Right now, the fact is reduce the daylight between Danielle Smith and separatism. Those things have to be one and the same. That is the task between now and then.
She doesn't have to bring that question. She doesn't have to bring the should Canada stay? Should Alberta stay in Canada?
Agree with,
the question she's going to bring is should Canada be advocating for more control within this confederation? She brings a question like that, and she puts Alberta Police Force, Alberta Pension Plan, all kinds of Alberta focused initiatives onto the ballot. And people say, yeah, I think we should do that, even though these are bad ideas at a bad time.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to advocate for separatism. What she will be doing is doing what Albertans believe Quebec did for years. Use the separatism question to get more powers for themselves. And that plays. And she's doing it with unbelievable without regard to the unbelievable threat that is separation. Keep in mind that Montreal used to be Canada's second city, and now it is probably fourth or fifth when it comes to headquarters for corporation, and that is because of the separatist flight.
Interesting
comment
with
fire here.
Our YouTube channel member Erica, sure appreciate her. She says Danielle Smith will keep playing both sides as long as she can keep selling this notion of a sovereign Alberta within a unified Canada. And she says it doesn't make sense, but people are buying it for some reason. Also, we got an interesting note from an audience member who sort of took issue with the phrasing of the Lukaszuk question. People can check that out at forever-Canada or forever-Canadian.ca, and if you missed it, you can catch our interview with Thomas and former Premier Ed Stelmach about 5-6 episodes ago on our podcast archive, our YouTube channel as well. The question, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada, said geographically, even with Alberta separating, hypothetically, it would still be remaining in Canada, if you think about it, which I actually think is a pretty compelling point. I mean, you guys know with referenda, every single word matters. And this audience member had suggested that this is an unfocused question.
This is why we have the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act, as proposed by Preston Manning, that has not been consulted through this process, that would be giving us a clear question that we could actually vote on. And maybe then we'd have a chance to really understand what it is that we're talking about. But what we're talking about at this particular moment is this kind of increased autonomy that Danielle Smith wants to have, a separate deal for Alberta instead of a separate deal for, instead of the deal that all Canadians should have. Every Canadian should be equal in our country, period, end of sentence. And by focusing on, separation, equalization, Alberta pension, we are trying to create an unequal union across our country, and that is a mistake of enormous proportion.
Before we thank you both for your time, absolutely love having you here. Ms. Katie has kicked $10 into our YouTube Super Chat. And as you both know, contributions to our YouTube Super Chat on non-charitable fundraising mornings are the audience's way of buying our guests cold ones. So the next time that you visit our historic Mercer Warehouse Studio in downtown Edmonton, you can help yourself to alcoholic and non-alcoholic options out of the Real Talk beer fridge, courtesy of Ms. Katie, who asks this. What are Carter's thoughts? Zain will go to you as well. Carter, we'll ask you to disclose your participation in certain campaigns. What are Carter's thoughts about the Edmonton municipal mayoral race and where he thinks Cartmel's campaign is at? You are currently advising the Cartmel campaign. Take us into it.
Well, I think the Cartmel's campaign is doing great. I mean, I think we have a party that is in place that is doing the groundwork to make the actual election happen. I know that there's a group of hyper engaged Edmontonians that would like to think otherwise, but at the end of the day, it's all of Edmonton that will be voting, not just the hyper engaged political set. I have a tendency to be able to reach the majority of the population, and I think that we'll be doing that in the coming weeks with Cartmel, as well as the Better Edmonton Party. Yeah. Do you get the sense, and Zain, I'll ask you in just a second, but Carter, in follow-up, it feels like there's, the mayoral race in Edmonton, with apologies and respectfully to the other candidates, it's essentially a 3-horse race. And you talk to, this is anecdotal poll. This is not official. This is my anecdotal experience talking to people. There are credible, engaged, informed voters that are finding it very difficult, I think, to pick their candidate, because there's not dramatic differences in policy at this point. It feels like more of kind of a personality comparison. How do you elevate a campaign on a landscape like that? Well, I'll tell you something. We had a debate on Sunday, and it was great. Everybody was taking Tim Cartmel's talking points and putting them forward. Sure. If everybody's just going to say the same things, then it's going to come down to experience and the ability to actually execute. And I think that that's where Tim Cartmel's going to be in the driver's seat. He has the experience and he has the ability. He's been Edmonton's mayor in waiting for almost a year. I don't see that changing in the coming weeks. Okay, I appreciate you taking the question, Zain. You look at the Edmonton mayoral race. We'll wrap with this. You look at the Calgary mayoral race. Of course, the incumbent seeking re-election in Calgary. That's not the case in Edmonton. It feels like both offices are wide open. How are you assessing it at this point, heading out into October 20th?
Yeah, I've been a bit removed, so and I'm not involved in any of the campaigns, so I don't get that view that Carter's able to share, or in this case, not share. Honestly, as he promotes his candidate in one of those.
Damn right, I'm promoting my candidate.
Two things to note. Number one, progressives, we have not gone away. We're still around. We have a bit of anxiety. We have a bit of a cloud over our head. There's a bit of a hangover, but we're there. We're loud and we're big in number. And so candidates, don't forget that those people exist. They're looking for bold things. We're not just looking for status quo defenders. We're not just looking for simple status quo defenders. The status quo has escaped us to the right even more than we'd like. Progressive people exist, and they will be mobilized, excited, and show up and tell people around them, which are people often that are not progressive, and especially when you look at municipal politics, I know the party banners add a slight complication, but they'll talk about what excites them and what mobilizes them. That's thing number one. Thing number two, run against the province. We're going to see more of it in the fall, but the province has, on issues of separatism, on issues of education, on issues of healthcare, on issues of leadership, all of those things are available to any one of you. Do not simply believe that you have to run a municipal campaign with municipal issues. We have seen this across the board. Federal leaning into provincial, provincial leaning into municipal, vice versa, municipal punching up to provincial. It's a tried and tested Stephen Carter strategy as well, so expect it from his candidates. But the province has created a lot of soft tissue for you to run against and for you to mobilize your set of voters. Take advantage of it. Other than that, I'm terrible at predictions, so I have no idea how this thing turns out in either of our cities.
No, I've got like buddies asking me privately, like on the golf course, and while we're Wednesday hockey, sitting on the bench to predict who I think is going to be mayor in Calgary and Edmonton on the 21st of October. And like, honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I can't get a real sense of it. Obviously, Carter, you're invested in a campaign. Yeah. I'm not, but I can't get a sense of where it's at in Edmonton right now.
Smart money's on my candidates.
Well, yeah, sure.
Always go that direction.
I will say this: the two of you are two of the smartest fellas that I know. We, in all sincerity, for once, consider it a huge honor when you spend time with us, especially when you spend double as much time with us as we asked for, which we very much appreciate. This is where we encourage people to be sure, if they don't already, to subscribe to the Strategists podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find them on YouTube. You've been hearing from Zain, Velji, and Stephen Carter. Thanks for doing this, guys.
Thank you.
All right,
boys. Bye.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon. Real Talkers with a lot to say on this, obviously, and it's been really interesting. Johnny, I know you've been keeping an eye on the live chat as well. We've got we've got some Battle River Crowfoot voters checking in. We got an email from Anna Banana, love that, who sent us a note. This was at 10:49 in the morning on the 18th of August. That was the Monday. That was by-election day. She says, Jess, I just voted, and I voted for Bonnie Critchley. She says, as a result of your amazing interview with her, I believe that she is honestly the best candidate to serve this riding, as opposed to a parachute candidate from Ottawa. She says, you know who I'm talking about. She says, have a good day, you and Johnny, and as always, stay real. That from Anna Banana. I saw Tommy Temper checking in our live chat, a conservative content creator, a YouTuber. Tommy, always appreciate you watching the show. Tommy said, Bonnie Critchley wouldn't have done nearly close to what she did, 10% of that by-election vote, without the support of the mainstream media. I think it's, Tommy makes a point in the sense that with, by the way, more than 1 million engagements, like downloads, streams, views of our highlights from that Critchley interview, which, places it certainly top 20 all time in Real Talk interviews. After she talked to us, there was a feature. Rahim Mohamed, as he alluded to, had featured her in the National Post. David Cochran had her on Power and Politics. So she was getting a lot of attention. I think, number one, because it was a compelling story. Number two, because, our home, our riding, that was her slogan. She was a military veteran, a rancher. She was running a grassroots campaign funded and supported, by volunteers that felt strongly that riding deserved somebody that wasn't going to be living in Stornoway, in the official opposition residence in Ottawa. So to be sure, media attention helped her campaign, but you could say that about any campaign. I think it was also a compelling storyline. Nobody wants to look at a by-election where there's 214 names on the ballot. I would say probably 10 of them sincere candidates, maybe 8 of them sincere candidates, and sort of assume that it's just a foregone conclusion without any storylines, not talk to any of the locals, not figure out what the issues are in that riding. And so that would be one of the reasons why we reached out to Bonnie, but also, Real Talkers, to reiterate, the number one reason why we booked Bonnie Critchley in the first place is because so many of you had reached out to us and asked if we were going to do anything on it. You were checking in from that riding, residents of that riding, and letting us know you were seeing her signs pop up. She had knocked on your door. She was a compelling candidate. She was kind of a no bullshit type person, like a real, I keep saying it, but like a salt of the earth type person. I know she made an impact on this audience. She made an impact on Johnny and I. And certainly, I think that, regardless of result, I think that, for her to get 10% of the vote in a by-election with a very motivated conservative base, obviously voters there very motivated to see Pierre Poilievre get the result that he needed to get back to Ottawa. Bonnie Critchley should be very, very proud of the campaign that she ran. I'll be curious to see if she sort of sticks a fork in it, her political career, or if she finds herself more motivated to seek election somewhere else. Perhaps the next opportunity I don't know, a provincial election, probably obviously not the municipal election coming up in just a couple of months, but I wonder if we will hear from, and I'm talking like in prominent fashion in the spotlight, Bonnie Critchley again. Or maybe not. Maybe it'll be a footnote in history. Maybe we'll look back and we'll remember that, Damien Couric, the MP who stepped down and who I guarantee will be back next federal election. And if the Conservatives form government, he will obviously be a cabinet minister of some portfolio as a thank you from Pierre Poilievre. and will probably, when he re-enters the House of Commons, whenever that may be, even if it's opposition, serve as a prominent shadow minister as he is rewarded for stepping aside to trigger that by-election. We're always curious for your takes on the storylines as they develop. You can send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. You can leave a comment on the YouTube episode, leave a comment on our Spotify episodes, and of course hit us up on our social media channels as well. You'll find us everywhere at Real Talk RJ. Courtesy our friends at Solar by Kuby. First episode of every week. This week, it's an update, a pretty exciting update, but we focus on something positive. We focus on something that, fills our bucket, so to speak, restores our faith in humanity. It is Positive Reflections, proudly presented by Kuby. And I wanted to shine a light on, a matter of fact, another sponsor, another partner here on the show, and that is our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. It was recently Miracle Treat Day at Dairy Queens across the country, and that includes the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. You know the drill with Miracle Treat Day. You buy a Blizzard, and all of the proceeds go to charities of choice. In this instance, it's the Stollery Children's Hospital, which of course serves families, providing innovative and life-saving health care for young people, for infants, children, and young adults. The Stollery, of course, serving patients in Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and beyond. And that's why we were proud as a family to stop by our home Dairy Queen. That's the Westmount Dairy Queen. That's where you can oftentimes find us. Our very own Wyatt Rudy, thrilled to pick up his favorite Blizzard flavor. I went with the Score Blizzard, by the way. He was checking out that Superman Blizzard and proudly putting his sticker of support up on the wall. Incredible to see that DQ absolutely packed with people, all of them enjoying Blizzards for a great cause. As I posted on my Instagram, this is the easiest fundraiser to get behind. Buy a Blizzard, help the kids. Come on, right? As a family, we're proud to support Miracle Treat Day, and we're very proud to partner with our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. If you can believe this, the 5 stores that support us here on Real Talk, the 5 stores that have been with us since day one, have collectively raised more than $2.5 million together for the Stollery over the years. That's the DQs in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. $2.5 million since the inception of Miracle Treat Day, and this year no exception. I want to thank all the Real Talkers that were there. We ran into a few of you in the lineup, and of course it just filled our hearts to be able to chat with you, and we were happy, more than happy, to pass your feedback along to the families that own those 5 DQs. We're proud to partner with them here at Real Talk, and even more proud to see every single year hundreds of thousands of dollars going to the Stollery. As mentioned, I'm excited to be out at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge this weekend in support of Tee Up for Tots, another Stollery fundraiser. We really want to use this platform to reiterate not just the importance of the Stollery, the amazing work that the healthcare providers, the doctors, the surgeons, the nurses, the frontline staff do there with some of society's most vulnerable citizens, our newborns, our children, our preteens, our teens, but also the organizations that step up to support that life-saving work, including the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. I know the team at Kuby Renewable Energy well enough to know that they won't mind one bit to have this segment used and utilized to further and support the work that's being done at the Stollery through Miracle Treat Day. Don't forget Positive Reflections, presented weekly right here on Real Talk, courtesy of the team at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting kuby.ca. Coming up on the next episode of Real Talk, we're going to check in with Alberta separatist Jeff Rath. He's the lawyer behind the Alberta Prosperity Project. You can send us your questions, your feedback in ahead of time to talk@ryanjespersen.com. And coming up a couple of episodes right now, we have a city councillor who believes he has a plan to save Alberta's capital, but he's not running on it. We'll find out why in an exclusive, another exclusive, right here on Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.